In the event of a fire, every second counts. In only 30 seconds, small flames can get out of control and turn into a major fire. In only minutes, an entire building can be filled with smoke and toxic gases, and room temperatures can reach up to 600 degrees at eye level. Temperatures in this range can scorch the lungs and melt clothes to skin. In 2003, home fires caused more than $6 billion in property damage. These fires claimed the lives of 3,145 people, not including firefighters, and injured another 14,075. There were an additional 198 fire-related deaths in the workplace. Fire clearly represents a serious threat to health and safety, both on the job and off. The danger of fire can be eliminated or minimized by knowledge. Understanding the mechanism of fire is fundamental to dealing with it. Prevention. It is best to take actions which prevent fires from occurring in the first place. Protection. Proper fire protection equipment and techniques can limit damage and injury. And fire response. Knowing how to react to a fire. To provide first aid for first-degree and second-degree burns, cool the burn under flowing water for at least 5 minutes or until the pain subsides. For more serious cases, cool the burn for as much as 30 minutes. Cover the burn with a sterile gauze bandage. Wrap the gauze loosely and do not put direct pressure on the burn. Do not use fluffy cotton, which may stick to the burn. Give the victim an over-the-counter painkiller. What not to do: never put ice on a burn. Never rub margarine, butter, or lard on a burn. Never break blisters caused by a burn. The victim of a second-degree burn should see a doctor if the burn is greater than 2 or 3 inches in diameter, or if the burn is on the hands, feet, face, groin, buttocks, or any major joint. Always remember to call 911 as soon as possible during any health emergency. First aid is intended as a stopgap measure to help the victim until trained emergency help arrives. The sooner you call 911, the sooner trained emergency personnel can begin attending to the victim. Once you've called 911, provide what first aid you can and stay with the victim until help arrives. Also, when providing first aid, remember the acronym Dr. ABC for providing the first 5 steps. As a reminder, Dr. ABC stands for check for danger, check for responsiveness, check airway for obstructions, check for breathing, check for circulation. If the victim's airway is blocked, clear it. If the victim is not breathing, provide mouth-to-mouth respiration. If the victim has no circulation, provide CPR. If an automated external defibrillator is available and needed, use it to restore the victim's circulation. The rest of this module will provide first aid tips for different health scenarios with the assumption that you've called 911 and performed the initial Dr. ABC steps of first aid. It is always best to receive CPR training from a reputable trainer or training organization. Many organizations, including the Red Cross, offer programs in CPR. There is no better way to prepare yourself to use CPR than to take one of these training courses, and they're highly recommended. Your employer may even facilitate such training. Remember, it's always better to learn CPR before an emergency happens. Once unused flammable liquids are stored in safety cans, place the cans inside fire-resistant flammable liquid storage cabinets or rooms. This helps to protect the liquids from ignition sources. Storage cabinets must be constructed of metal, equipped with a door sill that's raised at least 2 inches above the bottom of the cabinet, equipped with doors that lock at 3 points, top, middle, and bottom, and clearly marked flammable, keep fire away. Storage rooms are rooms that are special. In summary, a stable forklift and load has a center of gravity which is low and well within the stability triangle. Here are the factors that affect the center of gravity. Load weight is a major factor. As load weight increases, the center of gravity moves toward the load. Load balance affects the side-to-side location of the center of gravity. A load that is not centered will move the center of gravity to the side where the load is heavier. Load height is also a big influence on stability. The higher a load is raised, the more unstable the truck becomes. The higher a load, the less movement it will take to move the center of gravity out of the stability triangle. Stabbing can result from having the forks extended too far out of a load. This can happen at floor level when first approaching a stack, or higher up when placing the product in the stack. As stated earlier, if you don't know where your forks are, get out of the cab and take a look. Stabbing can also result from the practice of pushing a pallet into place using the fork tips. Never use the forks to slide a product into place. Always lift the load to reposition it. Stabbing can also occur after raising the forks up for stacking or destacking. With some forklifts, if the operator does not throttle down all the way after using the vertical lift, and then puts the forklift into forward motion, the forklift can jerk forward and stab product. Formaldehyde is a colorless, pungent-smelling gas. The most commonly known form of this chemical is as an aqueous solution used for embalming and preserving biological specimens. It is widely used in a variety of other products, predominantly in the production of resins and adhesives, such as those used in the manufacture of particle board and plywood. Formaldehyde is an irritant at levels as low as 0.1 parts per million and a threat to life at the 100 parts per million level. This module describes some of the uses of formaldehyde, how it can affect the body, and how contact can be minimized.
All right, here's some perspective. Every year in the U.S., the seasonal flu typically kills 36,000 people and hospitalizes 200,000. And that's just the normal seasonal flu, killing way more people than the stuff many of us fear the most. For example, every camper's worst nightmare, the bear, fatally attacks 3 people per year in the U.S. And his toothy cousin of the deep, the shark, beats him by just 1 more victim annually. And then we have commercial airliners. Those giant metal tubes hurtling overhead every 15 minutes, claiming the lives of 120 Americans every year. Now, while tragic, these numbers pale in comparison to the body count of the micro-terror we call the seasonal flu. Now, the very real concern shared by leading global health organizations is that without coordinated prevention efforts, the current pandemic could increase the worldwide flu fatalities from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands or even millions.
Tools are an integral part of everyday life, and often they are used without fully recognizing the potential danger they may pose. At work and at home, it is important to take great care to properly use and maintain all tools, as most tool-related accidents occur due to improper use or maintenance. It is important to pay close attention to the condition of tools before they are used, and to be aware of potential dangers in the work area before starting a job. For example, failure to take notice of the condition of a tool, such as a splintered shaft on a hammer, may result in the head flying off and injuring yourself or others. This course is designed to help inform you and raise awareness about some of the dangers associated with hand and power tools that many people work with every day. Your hands are a complex and important part of your body. Imagine performing daily activities such as writing, driving a car, or using a phone without your hands. Because hands are used so frequently, hand safety can be taken for granted. The construction and manufacturing industries pose a particular risk to the hands due to the size and complexity of the equipment and machinery present. Describing every dangerous situation and predicting all possible outcomes is impossible. This training will provide general hand safety awareness and discuss techniques for avoiding common hand injuries. Washing your hands removes germs from the surface of the skin. The longer you wash your hands, the more germs are removed. It is recommended to wash your hands vigorously with soap and water for 20 seconds. This will kill about 99% of the germs, which is safe enough for most purposes. Washing too quickly leaves excess germs and bacteria on your hands. These bacteria can reproduce rapidly. For example, an E. coli bacteria population can double in size every 20 minutes. If you wash your hands for only a few seconds, the germs that remain could quickly grow into a colony of millions, and you will be more likely to contaminate things you touch. There are at least 3 situations where containers of hazardous chemicals may be labeled. First, at the manufacturer, before the chemical is shipped. These shipping labels are required by OSHA's HAZCOM standard and must include elements called for by the alignment of HAZCOM with GHS. Second, the Department of Transportation, or DOT, requires labeling elements on the outside container when chemicals are being shipped. These labels are known as DOT Hazardous Material Dangerous Goods Transportation Hazard Labels, or simply DOT Transportation Labels. And third, when the chemicals have arrived at a workplace, the HAZCOM standard states that employers may use the original GHS-compliant shipping label or any of several alternative workplace labels. Of the total workforce, more than 30 million workers are potentially exposed to one or more chemical hazards. There are an estimated 650,000 existing hazardous chemical products, with hundreds of new ones being introduced annually. This poses a serious problem for exposed workers and their employers. In 1983, in order to ensure a safe workplace, OSHA established the Hazard Communication Standard. This standard is based on a simple concept that employees have both a need and a right to know the identities and the hazards of the chemicals they are exposed to when working. There may be potentially hazardous chemicals at your workplace. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, created a Hazard Communication, or HAZCOM, standard that requires employers to inform their employees of the risks associated with any hazardous chemicals at the worksite and provide training on how to safely work with those chemicals. The HAZCOM standard requires that employers keep material safety data sheets, or MSDSs, on site for all hazardous chemicals at the workplace. The MSDS provides information about a chemical, including exposure limits, health effects, routes of entry into the body, emergency and first aid procedures, personal protective equipment requirements, handling and storage instructions, and more. The MSDS is the most complete source of information about a chemical at the workplace. Safety begins with identifying hazards and then working to eliminate, avoid, reduce, or control them. A hazard is any situation or condition with the potential to harm life, health, property, or the environment. Hazards exist in all walks of life, at your home, on streets and highways, and in every workplace. Hazards can be placed into at least 3 main groups. Physical hazards, related to working around dangerous moving machine parts, mobile equipment, and energy sources. Work environment hazards associated with noise, air quality, toxic materials, or other job-related conditions. And performance and behavioral hazards resulting from a lack of hazard awareness, inexperience, carelessness, and/or insufficient training. Heat stress can be caused by several factors, including high temperatures, high humidity, strenuous physical activity, direct contact with hot objects, being close to radiant heat sources, and working in enclosed work areas. The next sections will cover these in more detail. In most cases, if airborne concentrations of hexavalent chromium are higher than the permissible exposure limit, employers must use engineering and work practice controls to reduce the levels to the Pell or below. An example of an engineering control is the use of ventilation systems to remove hexavalent chromium from the air. An example of work practice control is having welders stand upwind of welding activities that can produce hexavalent chromium. Employers are not allowed to rotate employees to different jobs to comply with the Pell. There are some materials that require hot work operators to take extra precautions. For example, when performing hot work over a floor that is combustible, the floor must be kept wet, covered with damp sand, or protected by a welding blanket or welding pad. If the floor is wetted and the hot work operator plans on using arc welding equipment or cutting equipment, all personnel in the area must use appropriate protection, such as rubber boots, to prevent electrical shock. There are some materials on which hot work should never be performed. For example, never carry out hot work on or near a combustible partition, wall, ceiling, or roof. Also, never perform hot work on anything connected to a combustible material. The permit issuer must assign a fire watch to the hot work site if there is a chance of anything other than a minor fire developing. A fire watch is also required if combustible materials in building construction are located less than 35 feet from the hot work site. Combustible materials are located more than 35 feet away from the hot work, but are easily combustible. Wall or floor openings within 35 feet of the hot work expose combustible materials in adjacent areas, including concealed spaces in walls or floors. Combustible materials are adjacent to the opposite side of partitions, walls, ceilings, or roofs, and are likely to be ignited. The fire watch must stay in position during all hot work, during all breaks for lunch or other reasons, and for 30 minutes after hot work has been completed. The permit issuer may require the fire watch to stay in position for longer than 30 minutes if fire hazards merit the extension. If one fire watch is not capable of directly observing all the combustible materials that can be ignited by the hot work, one or more additional fire watches will be required.